You are now watching Talking Points with Preferred Health Magazine. We are speaking to patient-preferred physicians and practitioners, Dr. Bonnie McLean. She is an Oriental and Integrative Medicine Specialist. Please hit that subscribe button and we bring you more inspiring interviews. Back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Talking Points podcast. I'm your host, Nancy Gregory. Well, I want you to picture this. A young nurse, daughter of a urologist and nurse working in a busy hospital. She keeps seeing patients fall through the cracks after treatment, their pain unresolved, their emotional needs unmet. That nurse was Bonnie McLean, and her solution would take her from Duke University to studying with shamans, eventually creating a whole new model of integrative care. 5 decades later, her methods are getting national recognition. Dr. McLean, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nancy. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. Well, you've just been named one of America's top 50 most distinguished professionals in medicine for 2025 by Preferred Health Magazine. What's it like to receive such an honor after 5 decades in medicine?
Oh my gosh, I do feel so very honored. I mean, I'm kind of surprised and pleased and
Yes. Your journey in medicine started with a family rooted in healthcare. Your father, a urologist, as I mentioned, your mother, a nurse. Can you paint a picture of what it was like growing up in that environment and how it sparked your passion for healing?
Wow, golly, it sparked it in so many different ways. I respected my father so much and loved both my parents very much. And we hardly saw Dad. I mean, he was always either at the office or at the hospital or sleeping. That was
yes, no doubt.
Exhausted, and so he'd be sleeping. So we didn't really get to see him that much, but I was always inspired by who he was and what he was doing. He had been in the Second World War, and he had been injured twice. He was almost killed, and he was the first time he was injured. He was put in the hospital, and then the Japanese blew the hospital up, and he was the sole survivor. So he ended up with, shrapnel in his head, and his eardrum was blown out, and he was, partially deaf, and he still practiced, still spent 20 years after that practicing medicine. So he had all my respect. And my mother was a nurse. They had met in a hospital before overseas. So she was a nurse and he was a doctor, and they met that way. So she worked with him at his office and, took care of him at home.
You are now watching Talking Points with Preferred Health Magazine. We are speaking to patient-preferred physicians and practitioners, Dr. Bonnie McLean. She is an Oriental and Integrative Medicine Specialist. Please hit that subscribe button and we bring you more inspiring interviews. Back to the show.
They were quite interesting. He also became an alcoholic, unfortunately, because
oh my goodness,
he had the PTSD from the war, and nobody knew what to do with it back then. And so that was a major problem, toward the end of his life.
There was quite a bit of inspiration, though. You saw what they did, and how did that inspire you?
I watched them work, and Dad would take me with him when he'd go on his rounds to see patients. And so I kind of grew up, coming from kind of like the caregiver end of seeing the patients. And it was just something, ever since I was a little girl, I never wanted to do anything else, except take care of patients.
You spent 20 years as a nurse, a registered nurse, before diving into acupuncture and Chinese medicine. What was the turning point that led you to embrace integrative medicine?
There were a couple turning points. I burned out, for one thing. Somehow I just burned out. And I also saw medicine changing. It used to be a lot more patient-centered and not money-centered. Not money is the big goal. I mean, you have to make money, but you don't have to get rich. I mean, I don't think the patient care arena is a place where people get rich.
Right.
You should not be getting rich off of, sick people. So I saw that happening, and I just didn't want to be part of that system anymore. And so I went back to school. I was going to actually be a counselor, is what I thought I wanted to go into. And so I went to Pepperdine and got my master's of counseling, and I was going to do that. And then I was living out in California, and I fell in love with this kind of wild Italian acupuncturist.
Oh, hey.
And he was in like the second group of acupuncturists that were trained in this country.
Mhm.
It wasn't even legal here until the mid-70s.
Okay.
So he founded the second school in the whole country. And so he talked me into switching again. So I went to another 6 years. I went to 3 years just to be able to practice in California, and then 3 more years to get my doctorate and, to be able to practice all over the country.
Now, I understand that you had a personal experience with inadequate hospital aftercare. How did that shape your decision as well?
Yes, it wanted me to create an alternative. I just felt like we needed to offer more tools for people, and I just feel like our system's pretty broken right now. So the goal, and again, it's big business. It should not have become big business.
You've studied ancient healing practices like shamanism and energy medicine across the globe. Can you share a story from one of your travels that changed the way you approach healing?
My first experience was I had some traumatizing events. The man that I was deeply in love with and thought I was going to marry decided he couldn't do the relationship anymore and told me he was going to move out. So when he told me that, he went to work. Then I got a phone call that my mother had died in a house fire. And I was just devastated. So he said that he would, stay with me for a while, for me to help me get over the grieving. And then he moved out about a month later, and I was still just very lost. I was just devastated. So I got in touch with a friend of mine out in Los Angeles, function, and I just wasn't able to think or work or anything. And she said, yes, I do know of a shaman who's up here from Peru. His name is Inti, and he's a healer, and here's his phone. So I said, thank you, and so I called him up, made an appointment. He was staying in LA in some little motel in like a cheap part of LA. And I didn't care. I just wanted help so badly, so I went down in this part of LA and knocked on the door, and he answered the door, and he had this orange, like little wrap around his face, and barefooted, no shirt, hair down to, below his waist.
Yes.
And I didn't care. I just wanted help. But I mean, it wasn't my world at the time. So I was just, I told him again what had happened, and he danced around me with his rattle and sang and chanted, and he had these branches, and he kind of lightly tapped me with the branches, and he had this egg that he rubbed on me, and just stuff that I had never been around. I'd never seen. I mean, I didn't care, and so he gave me the egg when he was finished. He said, now go throw this in a body of water. So I lugged this egg. It felt so heavy. I lugged it to Santa Monica Pier, and I walked out on the pier, and threw the egg over, and I just felt this release. When I threw it, I just felt this lightness and this release, and I didn't feel traumatized anymore, and I knew something very dramatic had happened, even though it made no sense to me, but I knew something had happened. I said, I have to learn this. I have to figure out what this was and, what's going on. So I spent probably 10 to 15 years traveling around the world, studying with different shamans. And in this country, I studied with Sandra Ingerman and her group, and Alberta Biodo. And they're both Americans. So I studied also here, but I went down to Brazil and to um, had a teacher in Australia. Um, I went to the Philippines and studied with one of the psychic surgeons there.
Right.
And he was one of the legit ones. I mean, a lot of them were, they saw that you could make money doing that, so they weren't legit. But that was a very small handful of barehanded surgeons. And there was something to that. I never had figured that one out. But we would stand like right next to him, and he would never put his hand under the table, so you could see his hands the whole time that he was working on people. And so that was pretty amazing. So, yeah, it kind of opened up my mind to a lot of other possibilities.
Well, at Spirit Gate Medicine in Pensacola, you treat everything from pain and addiction to women's health issues. Can you share a story that really captures the impact of your integrative approach?
I think, well, I treat a lot of veterans, and they're very skeptical. And so the first veteran that I saw, he was mumbling under his breath when I walked into the waiting room, and I don't know what I'm doing here, and this is crazy, and what is this acupuncture and stuff like that. And so I thought, okay. So I worked on him as hard as I got to make him feel better, put the needles in and got him all relaxed and did a little bit of massage and played soft music. And he got up and he said, "Can I take you home with me?" And he gave me this big hug. He said, "I feel so much better." And so that inspired me, to continue to work. And I see a lot of veterans now. I love working with all my patients, and I really especially love working with the veterans, especially because my dad was one. And so I feel, and both my sons are. And so I feel like with working with them, somehow I'm, honoring my own family. And
well, your patients give you 5 stars for both expertise and compassion. What's your secret to building such strong connections with them?
I just really love them. I think love heals. And, and I have a lot of experience. I'm 80. So I've been doing this over 40 years, and I did the nursing for 20 years. So I've been in the field for 60 plus years.
Yes.
And I love it. I still love it. I have no plans to retire. Why retire from a calling? You can't.
Well, and I think that's it. Like, it's clear that this is a passion of yours. So exactly, why not? Why do we need to stop doing what we're passionate about?
Yeah, I love my office. I love the people that I work with, and my patients, that, like I said, and also my colleagues that I work with. So I feel so blessed.
In your book, Integrative Medicine, The Return of the Soul to Healthcare, you called integrative medicine medicine of the in-between. Can you break that down for our listeners? What makes this approach so powerful in today's world?
Well, I see it as blending Western medicine with natural medicine. I don't think we have to choose. We shouldn't have to. It's not an either or, it's a both and. And I believe that the patient is their own doctor anyway. And so they get to choose. They get to determine how much of each one that they want, and which practitioners they want. I feel like I just don't believe in the authoritarian approach. I just feel like, the patients need to be empowered. And that way they will take better care of themselves. They know their bodies better than any of us could possibly know.
You blend Western medicine's technology with Eastern practices like acupuncture, hypnosis, and shamanic healing. How do you decide which tools use for each patient? And what's it like to see those methods come together to create real change?
Part of it, I guess I've been doing it so long, I kind of have a sense of what's needed, but I also ask the patient how they would feel about this or that, or this approach or that. So I think it's a combination of both of us kind of deciding together. I kind of wade in slowly, like I don't do my strongest treatments the very first time. I'm a lot gentler,
Yes.
because I have stronger things other than just the needles. Like I can hook them up for electrode stimulation. I can do cupping. I use far infrared all the time. I love far infrared on my patients, for most of them. So I think I think it's just kind of like a teamwork, deciding together. And I always tell them, if I do anything that you don't like, let me know. If there's anything that makes you nervous or uncomfortable, you don't like a needle in a certain spot, let me know, and they do. And so then you switch it out. So it's a team effort that we do.
Well, you've lectured on maintaining health and written a book to inspire others. What's the one piece of advice you'd love every listener to take away today and about staying healthy in the body, mind, and spirit?
Wow. I think you already said it, body, mind, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
To address all of those. And our Western medicine, addresses the physical body really, really well, but you don't get into the mind or the spirit that much. We separate everything. We send the mind people to the psychologist, and people get separated. And I think that, and it's okay to have several practitioners, but I think we need to work together and to bring it all together for the patient. And I feel like the patient is the one that chooses. The patient is like I said, they're their own doctor. We're all our own doctor. We don't need to be giving our power away to another person about our own body.
With 40 years in acupuncture and in a lifetime in medicine, what's one of the biggest lessons you've learned about healing that you wish more people understood?
I think the miracle of healing, that we can create amazing miracles with ourselves. And we can trust ourselves and trust our bodies, that our bodies have that wisdom. And if we can work with that and listen to our own bodies, like I said, I think we're kind of a head-centered culture. So, it'd be good to kind of really honor all the rest of us too.
Yeah, and we forget that, don't we?
I think we do.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think we're better. I think we're getting there. I've seen a lot of changes over the last 60 years that I've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very encouraged and very positive about our future as as we get more information and knowledge and more self-empowerment.
Say that you feel like it's changing. What excites you most about the future of integrative medicine in the next decade?
I see it getting more and more popular, getting more and more the norm of us being able to be empowered and to be our own physician, our own doctor. I do see that happening more and more, and I think it will continue to do that.
For our listeners inspired by your story, what's one step they can take today to bring them a little bit more compassion and balance into their own health journey?
Maybe just take stock of where we are. All of us have our weak areas. We have our things that we might get lazy with, and I'm included with everybody. I mean, I have to constantly remind myself and to walk my own talk and to practice what I preach. And, I think that, again, the whole body, mind, spirit approach, we're all going to be better at one of those than one of the other ones or two of the other ones. Mm-hmm. To see where we stand and to be honest with ourselves. Like for me, a lot of times it's been, not exercising regularly. So I have now an exercise partner who's better at self-discipline than I am. So I've learned, that if I hang out with her, I tend to.
That accountability can make all the difference. Well, Dr. McLean, thank you for this. We truly appreciate your time. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for your time and your interest. I really appreciate it.
Well, if Dr. McLean's insights resonated with you, you can dive deeper into her work by grabbing her book, Integrative Medicine, or visiting her website at spiritgatemedicine.com. Thanks so much for joining us today on Talking Points. Until next time, may your journey to wellness be as compassionate as it is transformative. I'm Nancy Gregory. See you next time.